Chapter 127. Kill the Fish. 1. The night wind was like a blood-stained sickle, bringing with it a fishy smell and moisture. The messenger of death carried it as it wandered to every corner of the city. In the darkness, the messenger of death advanced without restraint. Under the horn of killing intent, it seemed to fuse with all the shadows in the city, continuously gathering and dispersing. It was enough to make all lives despair. Until in the midst of this pervasion, it encountered a person in a dark and distant corner. It was a figure dressed in a gray robe. In the dark night, his back view seemed as though it couldn't be cut by a blade or pierced by a needle. The chill he emitted seemed to block the starlight from the sky. It was suffocating. At this moment, it was as though the flowing river met the sea, as though the greedy jackals had met the Wolf King. Its footsteps stopped, and its invisible pervading body fell silent. In the silence, it seemed to be observing, until the gray figure slowly turned its head. His cold eyes revealed a calmness that was like a dark pool. It laughed. It was as though it had found its fate, as though it had found its kindred spirit. It carried the scythe of death and cheered around the gray figure, lifting his long hair and swaying his robe. "The wind tonight is a little strong," Xu Qing muttered softly. He then turned his head and continued to stare at a house in the darkness. The house in his eyes was like a coffin, emitting a deep and heavy sensation. That was the residence of the merfolk youth he had found during his investigation. The other party was different from the Seven Peaks disciples. He didn't seem to have the qualifications to own a magic boat. Hence, he could only choose to stay on the shore with his entourage. Xu Qing calmly stared at the house. He wasn't in a hurry. In this dark night, his even nan-like breathing was like ice water meandering, long and deep. He was waiting. The aura of the mark accurately told Xu Qing that the person he was waiting for was here. Also, judging from the pattern of the fish going out alone last time, this fish should head out in the next few days. And today, the fish was in a very bad mood. Xu Qing felt that there was a high chance he would get the opportunity tonight. Time flowed by. 2 hours later, when the moon was once again covered by the dark clouds, a gust of night wind blew over. From the house that was already buried in the darkness, the sound of wine gusting could be heard. This sound caused this coffin-like house to feel even more desolate. It was like a low, hoarse moan before death, echoing in the quiet night sky. A figure appeared on the tall wall of the house. His gray Taoist robe couldn't hide the fishy smell that emanated from his body. His green gem-like eyes also didn't seem to be able to change his sinister nature. His loose robe that moved with the wind was like a silhouette, giving off a false sense of grandeur. However, it was only a thin layer, and it looked more like human skin that had been peeled off. He was none other than the merfolk youth. His mood was extremely bad. What happened during the day made him feel that he had suffered a great humiliation. So what if you're the Seventh Peak's eldest princess? Sooner or later, it'll cripple you and use your body to feed the spirits and maggots. The merfolk youth gritted his teeth. Due to his bad mood, he chose to head out now, which was a few days early. He felt that he had to vent his anger. As for the way to vent his anger, he had already gotten his 2 elder sisters to make arrangements. His enjoyment was not girls but children. This was a hobby he couldn't let too many people know about. He got joy from torturing children from other races. 1. His body swayed, and he moved into the night. As he moved forward, his figure slowly blurred and eventually disappeared. Regardless of sight or perception, others would lose track of him. It was as though he no longer existed. However, the scent of the mark wouldn't disappear. Xu Qing lifted his head and watched as the other party's figure disappeared. His expression was calm, as he silently walked into the night. The wind grew even stronger, like the clash between blades and air, echoing endlessly in this quiet night. An hour later, in a corner of an alley, the void distorted and the merfolk youth's figure reappeared. The instant his figure appeared, he sensed danger and retreated abruptly. However, it was still too late. A thick water curtain instantly formed behind him and even in the surroundings, directly enveloping the entire alley. The instant the alley was completely sealed off, a low roar rang out from the water curtain. A gigantic whale formed from a spell protruded from the water curtain and rapidly took shape. It exuded coldness and killing intent. It opened its mouth wide at the merfolk youth, revealing its sharp teeth. With an incomparably ferocious aura, it pounced over. The merfolk youth's gaze was sharp. Interesting, since I'm in a bad mood today, I'll play with you. As he spoke, he raised his hands and was about to perform hand seals. However, at this moment, the shadows that had fused with the darkness instantly dispersed into numerous strands like ropes. They rapidly arrived from all directions and coiled around the arm of the merfolk youth, preventing him from completing his hand seals. At the same time as his palm was enveloped by the shadow ropes, the shadows also rapidly spread toward his neck. Regardless of whether it was his hands or the skin that was touched by the shadows, they all emitted a piercing pain as though they were rapidly corroding. This scene was too sudden, and the expression of the merfolk youth changed drastically for the first time. The intense life and death crisis and the intense piercing pain caused his breathing to become hurried. As he struggled, the whale formed by the water screen in front of him had already arrived in front of him. It directly swallowed him. However, the instant the whale swallowed, the merfolk youth let out a roar and a blue light erupted from his body. The beam of light was like a sharp thorn, attempting to chase away the shadows on his body while shooting out in all directions.